Is it starting to feel a little bit better? The words that rang out from Reverend Maria McCabe. I tried to decide what I felt this past week, to name all the feelings. And I think the best way I can describe all of the feelings is to describe the journey I had physically yesterday as I rode my bike around Mount Airy and then down through Manayunk and along the river, past the Art Museum here in Philadelphia, through downtown, past City Hall, and down to the Independence Mall, next to the Liberty Bell, and the cradle of freedom and democracy here in America. And I was experiencing something to see all the people out dancing in the streets, clanging bells, beating on pots, driving through Center City in pickup trucks with American flags, waving, to hear music in the streets, and to especially see young women, especially young black and brown women, with the most incredible look on their faces. And to feel what the crowd was feeling. It was joy. It was joy. And there was relief. And there was doubt. And there was hesitation. And there was a sense of, is this really happening? And as I rode my bike around, I could feel all of these feelings. I could feel the joy. I could feel the relief. I could feel the happiness. I could feel the doubt. I could feel the hesitation. And as I rode by the convention center, there's a different rally planned. I could feel the anger. I could feel the hate. I could feel the despair and the fear and the distrust. I rode by a group of black Israelites preaching on the street. Felt something different. I rode past a group of those Westboro Baptist types just yelling at everyone. I could feel that too. And as I stood with my siblings seeking justice, demanding accountability, and calling for progressive values to be lifted up that help all people, especially the working class here in America, we marched down Market Street towards City Hall, chanting and singing. I could feel the love. I could feel the commitment and the resolution that the fight is not over, that this is not the end, this is only the beginning. And then I felt something different when a white man, roughly my age, deliberately ran into me on his bicycle as I was marching. And then as the marshals of our group surrounded me to separate me and him and to try and figure out what was happening, it became clear that he was feeling not joy. And he was feeling not hopeful. And it became clear that his intention was to disrupt and to make this about him. There was a full spectrum of human emotion going on in that crowd. So just like that white man is allowed to feel how he feels, we are allowed to feel how we feel. Whatever you've been feeling this past week, if you've been holding your breath like I have, if you have been feeling on pins and needles, if you felt a deep sense of relief yesterday, if you felt joy and wanted to dance in the streets, if you felt hesitant, if you felt angry that 70 million people might still vote in a way that seems to uplift bigotry and fascism and oppression and dishonesty and corruption. You can feel that. The sanctuary is big enough for all of that. And if you felt like when the bells were ringing and the party goats were out in Mount Airy, yes, party goats, and people were honking and the flags are waving, and if you still felt angry or confused or disappointed like I did, that we are a country so deeply divided, you have permission to feel that. If you feel guilty because you know you have it better than people with a different skin color, you have permission to feel that. If you're feeling some kind of hatred, some kind of anger, you have permission to feel that. These are times, and there have been actions, and there have been events that demand anger. But as someone who has come from a place of fear and anger and hatred, I'm begging you to not let that hate infect you, to not let that anger take you over, and to not let that fear run your life. Because, as the great warrior poet Yoda once taught us, anger leads to fear, fear leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, and that leads towards violence. And sometimes that violence is directed at other people. And sometimes, especially for those of us who have a progressive slant, the violence that comes out of that fear and anger is directed at ourselves. When we feel guilt and shame, and we think that we shouldn't. We don't know why we feel that way. Friends, that's violence. And if we are part of an anti-violence movement, we can't have violence towards ourselves either. Just as we don't wish violence towards the young white man who deliberately ran into me on a bicycle. And then, as I stood in front of him with my clerical collar, I said, "Sir, please go. Please go." And he yelled in my face, "You say you stand for love. You're not loving. You're not peaceful. Why are you attacking me?" I said, "Sir, please go." I could feel the hate and the fear and the insecurity radiating off him. And I did something that I did not anticipate doing, and I just yelled at him, "Sir, you are a child of God, and you need to go." And he did. But he wanted to make it about him, so he biked away and then got into the very middle of the intersection that we were marching towards to try and disrupt the march. And rather than be disrupted, the energy of the crowd recognized what was happening and simply parted around him and kept going. It was an incredible judo move by the organizers and by the people of faith and people of love who were leading the march, refusing to let the violence infect us, refusing to let the hate determine what we were going to do. So friends, I give you permission, not that you need it from me, but I want it to be spoken aloud. You have permission to feel whatever you're feeling. The joy, the relief, depression, anxiety, continuing frustration, anger, even hate. But don't let it take you over. And don't let it put yourself in the middle of all of it and make it all about you. Because, my friends, we have been in a relationship for the past 4 years that was emotionally abusive. And we may never know the depths of the trauma that affects so deeply our black and brown folks, but that affect those of us who are white too. And to begin to heal from abuse takes time, takes honesty, takes vulnerability, and it takes community. So as Tim has lifted up, the call to healing is needed. But we have to find healing for ourselves first. Before we can hope to be the change we want to see in the world, we may have to change what's going on in here. You may have to take care of yourself just to be able to operate in love. Catholic theologian Richard Rohr talks about the pain that we feel and the trauma that we internalize often without knowing it. He says you can do two things with your pain. You can transmit it or you can transform it. Transmission looks like running into the priest with the bicycle in the middle of the march. Transformation looks like the crowd going around and paying no attention. To take any negative energy and to process it, rework it, convert it, transform it into something like a dance party, that's that agape love at work. To reclaim symbols made toxic and harmful and to redeem them. All the American flags in the crowd yesterday. A giant papier-mâché bald eagle that came out of nowhere and flapped its wings, being held by people of all genders, all races, all ethnicities. To hear a Christian minister pray a blessing over a crowd. And Christianity has so often been used to oppress and harm. There's a lot of restoration happening yesterday. And when I watched the speeches last night, I hear the calls for healing, the calls for talking with people on the other side of the aisle, to give each other a chance to maybe ask forgiveness and seek forgiveness and offer forgiveness. And those are great ideas, and I truly believe they are necessary, and as a person of faith, I think they'll happen. But there's another strand of theology that says we are not asked to do that work with people who will not do their own work, with people who will not open their hearts. That may not be our job. I have listened to friends and family, classmates on the other side of the aisle for the past 4 years. I've listened to them defend the racism. I've listened and sought understanding. I've tried to put myself in their shoes, and I've been successful because I come from the same place. The same blood flows in my veins, the same input, the same culture. But not one from the other side has asked me to explain why I vote the way I do, why I feel the way I feel, and how it connects to my faith. Not one has sought to understand why I vote for my neighbors, and for the least of these more than myself. And that, friends, is a culture of white supremacy in action. So you have permission to feel, and you have permission to not engage. You do not have to feel called to try and heal others or build bridges to heal disagreement with people whose disagreement is rooted in the lack of your humanity, in your right not to exist as a full and life-giving person. You do not have to feel called to build bridges with people who have voted to harm you if they are not willing to open their hearts and do their own work. And I say that no one on the other side has asked me how I feel, has offered to listen to me. And that was true until last week, when a cousin of mine with deep libertarian tendencies texted me and said, I don't understand this. Can you give me something to read? Can you help me understand? Can we talk about this? I'm trying to understand. It's the first time. I don't think he'll start voting the way I do. I don't think he'll start wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. I don't think he'll hop on board immediately. But he's open. And he says he's trying. And just as I was that person once, I'm reminded of the hope that the soul of this nation can be redeemed, can be restored, can be made whole. So friends, I cannot let their hate, our hate, my hate, their fear, our fear, my fear, that deep insecurity, I cannot let it affect me. I cannot let it shut down my emotions and pretend not to feel the rage and the anger and the disappointment of 70 million who would give a pass to the violence and the emotional abuse and the racism and the indecency and the lies in favor of a tax break for the wealthiest Americans. But if there's to be peace on earth, it must begin with me. So I have got to find a way to begin the healing process. I have got to find a way to find peace, to cultivate peace, to breathe in peace. I've got to breathe and pray and run and listen to music that heals my soul. I got to play guitar and teach classes and write bad poetry. I got to bake pies and take walks and read really nerdy theology books. I got to do the internal work that opens my heart. And so do you, my friends. Because only then, when we begin the healing process of ourselves, can we be a part of that great love with a capital L that is at work in the world. That agape love that our universalist forebears were so intoxicated by. They were willing to risk everything. It is a love that is not always comfortable. It is a love that is not always safe. But it is always comforting. And it is always saving for the oppressed and the abused and those in need of good news. The love that Tim quoted from Mark Morrison Reed, a universal love that, brace yourselves, drags the last sinner kicking and screaming from hell and into heaven. Y'all, if you have not watched Fox News or read about QAnon conspiracy theories or been to rallies for the current president and felt the hate and the anger and the fear that permeates every waking moment of those lives, there is no other word for it than hell. It's not somewhere far away. It's here. And ours is a religion that seeks to build a heaven on earth and to drag those folks kicking and screaming into the light of love. But that is not your job alone, especially if you are a black and brown person who does not feel called to that. It might not be your job at all. And that's okay, because it is our job as a covenantal community, bound not by belief, but by relationship. And it is my job as a young white man, much like the guy on the bicycle. It is my job. And for that, I need to be able to breathe and to feel and to yell and to scream and to feel and to love and to love and to love and to love. And I need to hold on to moments like yesterday of biking around and feeling that relief and feeling that joy, because I hadn't felt it in a while. And just like every speaker at the rally, and just like we've constantly heard, the fight is not over. The work begins again. But now we have some breathing room. Those activists, Brittany Pecknett Cunningham, said, "Protect your joy. It is fuel for the fight." After that fight, we hope there will be peace. And if that peace is to be, if there is to be peace on earth, let it begin with us. May it be so. Amen.